Hello, welcome to the podcast. Today we have Vanessa Codorniu, who is an Argentine-Peruvian American trailblazer in the spirituality and wellness space with over 27 years of experience. She is an acclaimed bilingual psychic medium, a clinical hypnotist, astrologer, mujer medicina, and soul business mentor. Her ancestral healing hypnosis protocol has supported hundreds in healing, and her Nacimos Magicas, or Born Magical course on reclaiming our ancestral intuitive gifts, has guided thousands globally. So thank you so much for being here with me in the podcast.
Gracias. I'm so excited to be here with you, Ashley.
Yay, I'm excited too. So before I pressed play on this podcast, we had a deep conversation, which I thought was interesting because one of the questions that I had was about the Hispanic voice in the world and spirituality in general. And even though it wasn't Hispanic voice necessarily that we talked about, I wanted to, I guess, open up the floor to you about your thoughts and how important it is to empower spiritual leaders in the Hispanic community, in the Latinx community, in the BIPOC community, just because sometimes we're not truly seen in the spiritual community as BIPOC and stuff. Like there's other leaders out there. But anyways, let me digress and open up the floor to you.
Thank you so much. And, because I know what we were talking about, and I think es muy importante. I think that it's really, really important for us to do our healing work, for us to reclaim our gifts, for us to do that work of reclamation. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to wait until we think we're perfect or we've been doing this for 20 or 30 years healing, because there's a part of the work that's done in the dark, right? Meaning within our own inner self, our own inner darkness, our own subconscious mind. There's work that's done in our soul. There's work that's done through action, right? And stepping out and speaking on something is really part of daring us to reclaim our voices. So doing the inner work, doing it. And it's so important because I'll tell you this. So a lot of Latinos, because and a lot of them were already here, right? Like Mexico, like the area of Mexico, people were already here, right? Puerto Ricans were already there. Tainos were already there. People were already where they were. Then Spaniards came in, and we were talking about that, about colonization came in. And then there were suddenly these borders put on Mexico, like, oh, you're trying to cross, we have to build a wall. But you're like, Mexicans are like, we were here, you came, and we didn't even have that name, right? And Puerto Rican people who are part of a territory, they're like, we were here, we're not your territory, we're here. What happened years ago, because of the process of colonization, we thought as Latinos in general, right, because I'm older than you, that when we were speaking out, we were still speaking within the system. Right. So look at me. I'm a tough woman and I have academia and I have degrees and I've climbed this hierarchy. And I'm not putting down anybody who's fought for that. Right. Because everybody has their own journey. Some people are meant to be professors. Some people are meant to be CEOs, and your journey is not diminished. But we also have to know that a lot of us were pushed into certain ways of success. And so we became shaped and programmed by colonization. But now there's a different time. There's a lot of us speaking out. There's social media where a lot of people are saying, F that. We're not going to do corporate world. We're not going to do academia. And, it has its benefits to academia. It gives us research. It gives us understanding. But people are saying, no, I have my own inner truths. And so I think that it is really important for us to reclaim our voice because it's been taken from us from hundreds of years. And then it's been accepted only in the way that colonizers wanted us to speak. That's why I think you find that like they were picking white Latinos to say what they wanted them to say, right? Or they were picking a Latino who's like, look at me, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps and I made it in the United States. But that doesn't take away that we still need more social justice, that we need more respect for our ethnicity, for our culture, for our languages, that we need more educational equity where people have more access to education. And so because we've been shut down at first, I mean, look, they took our indigenous languages away. Not all of them, some of them exist, pero igual, right? Then Spanish or another language like English or maybe another language like French or Danish or Italian became our second language, our first language. So we lost our languages. We lost our conexión a la tierra, our connection to the earth. That's a language, right, into nature. Then we lost, not all of us, but we struggled, the language of spirit, that it had to be only these three main religions, right? Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, the Judeo-Christian religions, because everything else is demonic. And then on top of it, we have to learn the rules to function in the society, which is usually white-centered and patriarchal. So when we speak up, to whatever level we speak up, we're bringing our ancient well ancestors into space, into the place, not the space, into space, into the space, into present space. Porque I really believe that we all have well ancestors. That you have your Taino ancestors hanging out, that I have my ancestors hanging out, that we're happy, that we're living in a communal space before all this happened, that we're not perfect because nothing is, but they had their own development and their own languages and their own ways of healing themselves and their spirit. And so I think that there's a big wave for that. And we have to be careful because we want to make sure that, and this is the work of decolonizing, right? That we're not just speaking within the parameters of what society wants us to say. And the New Age, which is 1960s to maybe, who knows, till now, though it's been dying, right? It's like, was mainly white teachers channeling spirits, blue-eyed blonde, right? That's why I started my school, because I'm like, we gotta, come on, de donde viene toda la magia? Indigenous peoples all over the world, we gotta give them space. That they spoke on spirit, but a lot of times there was a blame. You have a health condition, you have a psychological condition. Well, if you weren't afraid, you would, well, how about talking about the racist system that we're in? And so it's important for us to call things out because there's still so many levels of deception.
Yeah.
And
Even
people do it to save themselves, right? Sorry.
yeah.
People do it to like, we've been silent to survive, but I think that many of us have, like, I say things, right, to the degree that I know that I can, because I know that I have white passing privilege. So I'm like, well, let me use that. Let me use that to say this. So we have a different, we're not in a battle zone right now, personally, us, physically, we're not in Sudan, we're not in Gaza, we're not in the Ukraine, we're literally in the US. We're in different battle zones where we can say things, we can speak.
Yes, what I was gonna say, and I honestly forgot where it came from, but I know what I was gonna say is that you mentioned something about like the fear. It comes from the fear, it comes from this like health condition. It's like, okay, what's the root of that fear though? Is it suppression? Is it something ancestral that happened that relates to a trauma from some sort of colonization? Because like how you said, like we have all come from a different land. At this point, I feel like there's not, especially in America, let's just talk about it that way. I don't think that there's a lot of people in this country that are just fresh off the boat from Ireland and they're only Irish, and that's the only type of blood that they have. Which I don't know if I talk about this in a previous episode or not. But I do talk about the fact that I feel like a lot of people in the United States are obsessed with their genealogy because there's a little seed planted within us that's saying like, you don't know the full picture. There's ancestors that you don't know about just yet, and you need to figure this out. So bringing that voice to that ancestry that's lost, bringing that voice, that story of suppression, of that anger, of that grief that's in there, to be able to process it properly and release it and bring space for actual healing, actual moving forward is really what is needed. And it's sad that we have to be silent for so long to survive, but now we're at a point where there's so many ways that we can speak out, so many.
Exactly. And no one gets to tell you how you should. At the same time, one of the things that I was sharing with you is if you're going to place yourself in a leadership role, especially a spiritual leadership role, then you're basically asking for it. You're saying, I'm a leader. That means that you've got to have the difficult conversations. Even if you're like, I don't know what to say right now, we have to address things, and so the new age taught us, we can love and light it, just give it love, it'll all be okay. Nobody really talked about racism. And a lot of the circles that I went to, I saw people who were mostly white who'd been here 200, 300 years. And again, I'm not diminishing what white folks have gone through being here 300, 400 years. I know Irish people were mistreated, enslaved, in servitude. I know Italians were hated. I know white Jewish people, Ashkenazi people were also mistreated. And let's not get into that because they've been mistreated all over the world. I know of this. This is not ignorance. At the same time, what happens with lighter skin, right? As I know that I'm white passing Latina who's mixed, is that you're safer than other people. You're safer than our Black brothers and sisters, right? You're safer than our Indigenous brothers and sisters. You don't have that target on your back as much. So if you're a spiritual leader and you have some privilege, we've got to use it to help and to support, because otherwise it's easy, right? Tan fácil. It's so easy nowadays. You sit there, let's say you're out of work and you just sit there and memorize all the spiritual stuff online. You learn all the crystals, you learn all the stuff, learn how the bell, and then you go up, hello, everyone. Everything's happening. We're in the light. And that's some crock of shit. I think that we have to use our voice to call things out with compassion and kindness. And we also have to hold ourselves accountable. Again, not to punish ourselves, but am I doing the best that I can with the privileges that I have? Right. And that doesn't mean, again, that we're going to go poor and give everything away. Like I do a pay what you can Reiki. People were critical of me. They're like, how could you do that? But I wasn't poor because of it.
Yeah.
Just people were giving gifts and they were here, Vanessa, here's 275, give it to somebody. I'm like, oh my God, thank you. I didn't ask for it. And I was able to find someone, a BIPOC person, to do the scholarship. So I think that there's ways of doing business. There's ways of being a social justice aware spiritual healer. So it's not like you're in a bubble floating somewhere, because that's the white new age world. And then we can't go copy that as Latinos. We have to create our own, which I think is happening.
Yeah. And I love what you said earlier too, before we started the podcast, about you can't have spirituality without reality.
You can't, because, okay, why did all of these indigenous practices begin? If you think back in the day, we're wandering around, we have no electricity, and we're like, oh, Pachamama, she's speaking to us. What is she saying? Mother Earth. We develop our language and a relationship. Father Sky, Padre Sol, Taita Inti, right? We came up with names all over, whether they were Mayan and Incan, whatever, North American names for the indigenous people. We came up. In Ireland, they had a name for a Celtic goddess. In Greece and Rome, we connected out of a need to understand, to explain, to interconnect and weave and work. And so everything was based on reality. Right? We would do a rain dance right in North America. I'm sure in South America we did it too, where we were like begging like the sky and the Mother Earth to rain on us so our crops would grow, right? Like these are based on reality. It's not, oh, so I could go to the fifth dimension. I don't think really, I mean, I could be wrong, that our Mayan, Aztec, Inca, and other indigenous ancestors were like, I just want to go to like the 5D now. I don't think they were doing that. I think they were like, we have our children and it's been a cold winter and they've been sick and we need these potatoes. I'm talking about Peru,
Hmm.
all the South American. We need the potatoes, or there's been too much rain. The crops are too watery. How are we going to feed? The practical things of how to survive a winter or a tropical rainstorm or a fever or an illness, or things that came out of that's where the indigenous practices came out of.
Yeah, the same thing with like home remedies, herbalism, witchcraft.
Yeah,
We didn't have medicine. We needed to find ways to work with the land, to work with the earth, to survive, to heal, to prolong our lives with what we had around us.
right. Right. And so to me, like, like I've been healing my cough with mullein, right, drops, but I went to the doctor because I believe in both. And they're
Yes.
like, your lungs are clear. You're allergic to the stuff here where you live in Central PA. And who else? The spiritual stuff coming up. But it's a lot to like cough on. There's a lot energetically to cough on, right? Pero I use mullein and I use this, and my brother healed himself from long COVID where doctors failed him. My brother went back to like a lot of the things our grandmothers and my mother did. And then he did more research. He's on reishi mushrooms. He just brought back his oxygen levels.
Oh,
And
that's so good.
and he did it with mullein and other herbs. Yeah, it wasn't good. And so there are ways to heal ourselves. And all of these practices were based on our survival and our thriving on earth. So when you see something that's not connected to earth, that's out there, and I'm not saying extraterrestrial or being part of an intergalactic family is not earth connected, because I think that most North American indigenous peoples that I've studied, and I have not studied all, and also the Inca, we believe like there's a connection to the stars, right? Chaska and Quechua, and we come from the stars, we return to the stars.
Mhm.
So there is an intergalactic, but at the same time, we may come from out there, pero en este momento estamos aquí, we're here right now. And you see that when there's an imbalance in people who come to me, I'm a star seed, and I can't deal with the world, I can't work, I can't do this, I can't. And I'm like, well, as a star seed, perhaps you're living this earth life to learn to be yourself even under these conditions.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's like I have to remember who I am. We're here remembering who we are. And how do we deal with all the duality of we could die at any moment in this body, but yet we're eternal? We're spiritual and we care about social justice in the world and our sisters and brothers, but yet we all have the same 24 hours and we're working and living and trying to clean our houses, right?
Mm.
And get good food in our bellies, like all these things. It is a lot for a human. And so I think that our souls are having this human experience. We have to remember, though, that it is the human experience.
Mhm.
It means that we're going through cycles of change in ourselves. We're going to age no matter how young we look for as long as we look. There's going to be little wrinkles popping up because that's time, right? We're in this, but our spirit could stay young, and we're going to experience things that no amount of prayer or offering may keep us from, if that's part of our learning journey. So,
Yeah, we live in a world where we're surrounded by cycles. The world that we live in is a cycle. We're born, we grow up, we disintegrate, we die. Someone's born, someone dies. Like there's the whole birth and rebirth. A flower grows during its season and dies away during winter. You have the spring, the summer, the fall. Like you have cycles everywhere, the moon, the sun, everywhere. We can't ignore the fact that we are living in a reality where cycles are the focus of our experience. And I also want to bring up the fact that, like, with leaders, a part of being a leader is helping create a new way or pave a new way into something better. And now that Pluto's in Aquarius, that just entered my brain actually. Oh,
yeah.
wow. Now that Pluto's in Aquarius, because the whole thing about leader and paving the way and all of that being tied to Aquarius season with Pluto, I guess you can say, is like, what isn't working anymore for society as a whole? What are the shadows behind our society that need to just end so we can bring in things that are going to help everybody? every single person, of every ethnicity, of every country, because everybody here is a human and everybody here deserves to live their life in peace and harmony.
Yes. Well, Pluto in Capricorn the last 20 years has made us become aware of how our governments have failed us, how our religious systems have failed us, because it was in Capricorn, which is the elder, which is authoritarian figures, which is the system, which is patriarchy. And so the 20 years we've been seeing it being chopped down. At the same time, now that it's in Aquarius, which is humanitarian, it's always the images of a woman or man pouring forth this water. So people think Aquarius is water, but it's not. It's an air sign. And meaning, how do we nurture humanity? Like, let's feed humanity. And so the next 20 years are going to see us having dark nights of the soul, because Pluto drags you into like the underworld. Dark nights over the soul, over our lack of humanitarian awareness, our
Mm,
lack of, when we harm each other, um, and when we are abusing the soil and when we're abusing the water, we're screwing ourselves up
yeah.
and our future generations. And for too long, I think that there's been such a focus on us, like me, 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 me. I want my this, I want my that, that we haven't thought about the future. And I think the next 20 years, steering us into the future, we're going to be dealing with that. And I want you to know too that Neptune also went into Pisces. And Neptune is great spirituality. It's also great delusion, and it's in Pisces.
Mm,
So there's going to be a lot of deluded people. Okay. While Pluto's fighting for a humanitarian and wake the F up, or I'm going to drag you and I'm going to drag the collective, right? You're going to suffer. Then there's going to be Neptune and Pisces. And I think that some of the things that are going to come up with that is more like ketamine assisted therapy, more plant medicine coming into therapy, more using and tapping into the wisdom of the earth and the wisdom of altered states to heal, more connection to trauma. But there's also the thing where we escape through film, through media, through what is it called? Virtual reality, right? Through and listen, I love tech, to be frank with you. I do, because my whole business is built on tech. I started my service a long time ago at 16 and then 22 free circles in my apartment. But when I went full time, it was on a conference call system, right? And I do full time online, like my whole life. It wasn't when I went full time, it was online. Before, I was always doing in person, renting a healing room all the years. I love tech for that. I love tech for our ability to do this, what we're doing right now. At the same time, I don't love it for the deep fakes that are going to come the next 18 years that are already here, where they're going to take our heads and put it in other bodies. They're already doing it. We're not going to know what truth is. It's going to be a real struggle for truth. And so I think that speaking out and being rooted and committed to healing and being honest and decolonizing. Because a lot of people we don't even know when we're not decolonized. And there's
mm.
always another space of decolonization. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but, from a very basic view of Latino society, ay, ella tiene pelo bueno, ella tiene pelo malo, she has good hair, she has bad hair. No, every hair is beautiful and good. It's just that the words have been colonized. Que es
Mm-hmm.
una buena, what's a good nose? What's a bad nose? What's this? What's that? Right? What is good skin? What's bad skin? These are things that we hear Latinos say, and they're like, no, I'm not racist, but it's been integrated, right? But that's where the decolonization. Well, why do we say this shit? Everybody's beautiful. We don't have to look like this or like that, or straight hair or curly hair. We look how we look. And so the decolonizing of thoughts, even of like, a man has to take care of me, because we're in a patriarchy, right? How do we decolonize? Well, I stand on my own 2 feet and then let me share with my partner, right? So I think that there's a lot that's going to happen next 20 years. Woo!
Oh yeah. And also the other aspect of like light versus dark. Whenever people, I was one of them, and other people that have come to me after the fact, that would start with spirituality or just start seeing things and they see like a spirit and it's a dark spirit, right? It looks dark. It's like just because of the color does not mean it's intention, does not mean it's its foundation, its energy, the thing that it's putting forth, right? Like it just means that you're not able to see it clearly just yet. And it's not about light or dark, it's about what is the feeling that you feel. And it all comes down, for me, authenticity. Like, how can you be authentic with yourself, with who you are? What is your authentic truth? What is somebody else's authentic truth? Um,
But we can't get to our authenticity if we don't peel back the layers,
yeah,
because somebody could look at you and say, no, I authentically feel that straight hair is beautiful.
you're right.
That's
Yeah.
how I think. Or no, I shouldn't tan myself because it's better to have a light skin. Or, oh, que pena, I don't have dark skin. That's the most beautiful skin and I don't have it. And now I'm ugly. Whatever. They can authentically feel that they feel that. So we have to, why do we think that? Who were we before we were told that God was over our heads on a cloud? Who were we before we only saw blonde, blue-eyed white leaders in yoga and other things, right? When yoga comes from India, for fuck's sake. Sorry, it's okay to curse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm like, I'm spiritual, but I also curse. And I'm like from New York City, people. And it's like, who were we before we were told we had the wrong hair, we had the wrong body, the wrong age? Who were we before we were told that we were not enough? We were enough. We were an ensouled being coming into the earth for this adventure. And but if you're afraid to go outside, because if you're wearing a hoodie, somebody might shoot you because you're black, right? Or you're worried about your son or your daughter. How can you be authentically yourself when a system is already set up? And so we have to understand that when we have to meet people where they're at, because not everybody has the privilege of being like, I'm just going to be myself and do whatever, because there are some people who could walk outside and nothing's going to happen to them, or maybe less is going to happen to them. And there are people who have to worry because of the racist, the inequalities that we have. Listen, when a woman is walking, whatever color she is, but a woman of any ethnicity, any race, is walking at night in a city, she's worried about things that men are not. And
That's
men
true.
could still be raped. Men could still be raped. But when you talk to a man, he's like, I didn't really think about it. I was just walking down a dark street. But meanwhile, me, I'm like, okay, I'm walking in the middle of the street where the light is. I'm not going to be on the sides. I lived in New York for a long time by myself. And I used to work in a nightclub at night after I worked in the day. So I had to come home at 4:30 in the morning. I would take a cab. But if I came home at 1, I would take a train. So I have, you know what I mean? And what are the things that I'm aware of? And so by the very nature of the system that we're in, and by the very nature of the body that we incarnated in, and the race and the ethnicity and the gender, etc., we all have different things going on with us.
Yes, yes, yes. And I wanted to bring in the fact that this is a little bit more scientific, but also not. The color of your skin has a purpose with the sun and the way that it absorbs sunlight. So the darker complexion you have, the easier it'll be for you to absorb that light. The lighter complexion you have, the harder it would be. And because there's so many things aside from just the color of the skin that pertain to the survival of someone, right? You also have to think like there is a purpose for the type of hair that you have. There is a reason why some people have curly hair, wavy hair, straight hair. And to take it a step further, everything physical has a spiritual, energetic layer as well to it. So, what is the spiritual meaning of straight hair, of wavy hair, of curly hair? And it's not something that I personally am very knowledgeable about, but through my own experience, I know that I'm born with curly hair. And if I have curly hair, my crown feels more protected because it's a little bit more coarse. There's more stuff around here, around my crown, versus when I have straight hair like I have now, because I went to a wedding. Um, then like it's more open and I feel that my crown is more open. So I have to take extra layers of protection to make sure that what's coming on around my crown is like exactly what I want it to be. So I just want to at least just add this to the conversation for those people that may be a little insecure about their own hair, because we all have insecurities. That's normal, that's human. but like to try to find what that spiritualness is, that spiritual gift behind the texture of your hair truly is for you. Um,
I,
and also,
I love that.
yes, yes, and also back to patriarchy. The goddess Isis has a crown that has two horns and a solar disc inside of it. The same, similar to Hathor, right? That's a solar disc. It's associated with the sun. Osiris, her counterpart, was in the underworld. He was associated with the moon. Like there was a point where the woman was associated with the solar
Yes,
energy and
yes,
the man was associated with the lunar energy. And it's like now it's reversed. So it's just like, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that we have to, not all the time, because your truth changes moment by moment. But at the same time, when you look at religion, when you look at indigenous practices, when you look at Egypt, Samaria, Babylon, even before that, like Atlantis or whatever else you want to look into or that you can connect with, like there has always been a transition of information, but there's always some capital T truths that just get dressed up differently, right? Between one thing and another. And it's just like really being able to discern the reality of it
right.
all.
And the truth of the matter is that, listen, race was made up by people. Like we're all humans, right? And then um the labels feminine and masculine was also made up. We know a lot of brave ass women who are like on their horses defending their people and their country, who are brave warriors, right? We know of them and we know that they existed. And it is the socialization. I would say that in some places the moon became represented by the woman because the woman has a moon.
Mm-hmm.
And there are different phases of her menstrual cycle that would be more in alignment with, let's say, the phase of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
um I mean, we're everything. We are, if we want to be bold, we're bold. If we want to be quiet, we're quiet. If we want to be mysterious, we are. But I love that thing that you said about connecting to your hair texture and your hair type for a spiritual reason. And I'll tell you, I had fine hair, like fine wavy hair most of my life. And now as I'm getting old, and then never grew past here. So my hair couldn't grow, could never grow past here. And as you get older, your hair actually gets thinner, by the way. I don't know what happened to me. I've actually trimmed it. It was like even longer. And I think it's a function of, like, for me, my spirituality. Like
Nice.
my ancestors are like, yeah, you may be getting older, but girl, we got you. It's like they're just like they want me to have and I'm like, well, we can't have it to the waist now. But it's an interesting thing that as a younger person, it would only grow up to here, and would you stop? And people were like, how could you, like, you're getting it trimmed? How's it? I'm like, I don't know. Um, and I think that's just part of how spirit is like speaking through me. And what I learned too in South America was that, your hair is an extension of your spirituality and like the length. Like you should keep it long, right? But that was already when the hair was getting long. So I was like, all right, maybe they're trying to tell me something. But at the end of the day, if let's say you had to shave your hair because of a health condition,
Mm.
that's also, it could be a spiritual thing for you as well. And it's like, how do we reclaim ourselves in the face of the system, right? That we're trying to change, but it's going to take time. And one of the things that I feel is like connect to nature, connect to truth speakers, create communities or join communities where people are brave enough to say, I don't know, or brave enough to say, is like, I know that this is happening and I don't have an explanation for it, but let's meditate or let's pray on it without denying it. Trust your intuition, right? Like we were talking about that too, about trusting your inner knowing. And how do you separate that from trauma too and fear? Like, for example, um, you could be an HR person and you were mugged by a man who is 6'2", right? With, let's say, I don't know, reddish hair. And now you're in HR and a 6'2" man comes in with reddish hair and you're like, I don't like him.
Mm.
I don't know, but I have a bad feeling. It may not be an intuitive feeling at all. It may be residual trauma because somebody who looked like him dragged you into an alley and robbed you, right? Or you like someone who's not good for you because they remind you of a dad or a mom who never gave you the love that you really wanted. I don't know. I feel like they're family. And suddenly we're dating them. And suddenly we're going into the whole trauma of, oh my God, they're triggering me and the dysfunction. And so the things that we feel aren't always clearly an intuition. And that's why I always invite people to have a little notebook or a note on your phone where you write things down and start to unpack your own intuitive knowing. Like in a lot of people's lives, where in families, when you dream of a wedding, it's a new beginning, right? In general, my family, it means death. So opposite to what most people. But time after time, when people are dreaming of a wedding, alguien se muere, somebody dies. And so that doesn't fit with a book on dreams.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I always say, don't even look at that book on dreams. Like, ask yourself and then notice, like, literally study your inner landscape. What does that feeling in your lower stomach mean? Does it mean you didn't eat? Does it mean you're hungry? Does it mean that you don't like that person and you don't know why? And then you're right. And so I took a long time. I started reading people at 16, right? Because my parents tested me and blindfolded me and all this stuff. And then I started reading people for free, right? My dad had a business. He had all these Latino business owners. And there I was 16 and I'm like, oh my God, I'm in high school. Can I just be a girl? Can I just, because they're asking me all these deep things. And I'm like, I hear this, I know this. And then at 22, I joined a talent agency that started sending me around to Boston, Philly. I was doing like book launch events and things like that. And that means that I was reading at events where they had music like doonch, doonch, doonch. And I'm like, oh God, please help me, help me, help me hear clearly. Espiritu, help me. I'm like there with my little tarot cards, And and so I've been doing this for a long time. And yet and still, I still doubted myself. I still got attacked. I was already reading people for 7 years when something said, don't let this man in your house. And then I'm like, oh, but I don't want him to think I'm rude. See, the colonizer, I've been taught to be nice girl.
Mm.
Girl, what is the man going to think? And then he attacked me. And then I was like, oh my God, what did I learn from this? No, don't be nice. I've traveled out of like I've traveled in other spaces, right? Like I've been in Panama and Costa Rica, where I've come out of a house and there was nobody in there. And I've literally waved getting in an Uber or a cab. Like, no, I'm not alone. Like spirit guides. But you know what I'm saying? Is that there are things that I've learned to do for protection in this world because something told me to do it. But then I want to share a case. I once got into an Uber and I got a very bad feeling. And as I'm
Mm.
getting the tour, I got a bad feeling. And I'm like, do I not take it? No, it's okay. They've changed, but you're picking up their past. Okay. But see, the way that clarity comes through is because I've worked on it for decades.
Mm.
So I sat in, he started telling me, I moved here to Central PA, but he's from Compton in California and how he was part of a gang and he was in jail. All the stuff that happened to him and that he did bad things and that he came here and he built his life again and that he is spiritual. He's a father to his kids. And so that thing that I first picked up, Spirit's like, no, it's his past. I was like, okay. If Spirit would have been like, nah, girl, get away, I've been like, sorry, I gotta go back inside. I forgot something. I'll pay you anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's like, but that type of clarity comes with time and self-observation.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point because recently I've had this thought about like sometimes when you feel like someone's off, right? Sometimes you're taught or you think like, oh, like there's something off with this person because they hate me, because they're sending me in mal ojo or like they're jealous or whatever. But it's like that's not always the case. Like sometimes if you have like an off feeling, that just means like, yo, be cautious, like be wary, like, just observe.
Their mom could be in a hospital and they're not telling you.
Exactly. Exactly.
They could be fired. Somebody could be cheating on them. So I love that you brought that up. And that's why it's really important for us to observe ourselves, to study our intuitive knowing. Because if I had $1 for every person who come to me, my intuition, I don't trust it anymore. I walked into a room, he looked at me or she looked at me, we looked at each other, and we got married, and now we're divorced. I'm like, but did your intuition tell you that you were going to be there together forever? No. I just knew I was going to marry them. I go, right. That's as far as your intuition went.
Yeah.
So we jump to conclusions based on our expectations. And most of the time, I mean, this is my perspective. I could be wrong. I don't think spirit's trying to give us what's best for us and to teach us lessons, but it's not invested in you working in a place for 40 years. It's not invested in you being married to somebody for 50 years. If it happens, it happens. It's invested, I think, again, this is my opinion, in us growing.
Yeah.
And if we grow within that marriage, or sometimes we don't, or maybe we grow never being married, or maybe we grow having 10 kids, or maybe we grow not having kids, it doesn't look one way. And that's why we have to be careful with our intuitive knowing, not to jump to conclusions,
Yeah.
because we put it like the rose-colored glasses.
Yeah. And like how you said, feeling and intuition are not directly related.
Yeah. And you have to know what to trust. Like,
Yeah.
when I was in college, I was a debate champion, and every weekend, all of my team, we used to go away and like win, win, win. And sometimes I'd be in third place, they'd be in first. Like, we were so good, all of us, that we just kept switching places. But for the national team, my coach didn't want to take me because like women don't win. This is a long time ago, but he's like, women don't win. Right. In the debate world at that point, at that time, no woman had ranked in, I think, the top 5, you know? So he's like, we're going to leave you at home. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they gave me the debate scholarship and all that. I was the first Latina, the first woman. And I'm like, how? And then, so I was upset. I'm crying there in this grotto. It's like the Virgin Mary grotto. And I'm like crying. And there's like mist, I'm on the Hudson River, upstate New York. And suddenly I hear very clearly, you need to go to nationals at the Air Force Academy. Your partner and you will be top 5 in the country. It was like that. And I know because I hear very clearly. I've never been wrong with what I hear because I don't add to it. That's all they said. That's all I heard. So I was like, what? And I ran back to my dorm, got the quarters because it was back in the day with no cell phone. Called my mom, Dios mío, mami, papi, Dios mío, le escuché la voz, estaban ahí, Virgen María. They're like, okay, we'll pay for your ticket. Them like, can you pay for the ticket to go to, Colorado? They're like, it was at the Air Force Academy. Yes. Then I run to my partner, please, oh my God. And, he's a dude from upstate New York. He's like, you're crazy, but, you're my crazy. So I'll go with you, right? He's my pal. And he's like, I'll debate with you. And then I go to my coach, who's like 6'5", big guy. And he's like, I told you no. And I'm like, I'm like yelling at him, you can't do that to me. I'm a child of immigrants. I came here when I was a little girl. I have a green card. I'm a woman. I have to fight for. I'm just like, and the Virgin Mary said I'm going to be top 5 in the country, right? And they thought I was crazy. Well, my partner and I came in 3rd in the country in novice level. But it was only because I fought. Only because I was like, oh my God. And then I'm like, do I say it? Do I look like a crazy woman by saying this energy spoke to me? They all thought I was crazy. But then when we had the trophy in our hands, they were like, oh shit, And so, but we want to make sure that these things aren't lies because, not lies, that you're not layering it with your own desires. I
Yes.
wasn't even thinking of ranking. I just wanted to go for the experience. I wasn't even thinking of it. It's like, you're going to be top 5 in the country. And I'm like, so and that was, I was 19 years old. So it's important to do the work for ourselves, to start listening and then going, okay, that's what it meant. Because otherwise it's easy to be like, well, it let me down because I got divorced. We only went on 3 dates. I thought we were meant to be. Well, you were meant to be for 3 dates. Right? Or this job was going to be forever. No, it was to teach you the lessons, and now you're ready to move forward, right? I know we've gone on, girl. I know.
Yes.
Hay que cortarlo. Tell me the truth. Yeah.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I'm loving this. Like I had a list of questions and topics that I wanted to talk about, but this completely evolved from something different, but it's something that's needed. So I really appreciate it. But something that is tied to what I wanted to ask you about, which also just so happens to also be about what we've been talking, is about colonization still. And I had an amazing experience with you when you did the past life regression hypnosis, like the ancient healing hypnosis, which, by the way, if you're listening to this and you want to do a past life regression, please do it with Vanessa. Oh my God, she was amazing. Like it was so great. Um, and in that, I connected to my ancestors and everything. And I just wanted to bring up this whole question of colonization through spirituality, because for me, being Puerto Rican, like it's easier, in my opinion, I feel like if you were to go to Dominican Republic or you were to go to Cuba, like Santeria is more of a bigger thing there, but in Puerto Rico, it's very, very hush hush. It's not as easily accessible for me as a Puerto Rican to find about all of this stuff. And I guess another reason why I'm asking this is because your email says
Oh yeah.
Oshun.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a two-part thing about spirituality and colonization, and then also just who Oshun is to you.
Thank you. What I wanted to say that um, I grew up in a Catholic-based home with a lot of curanderismo, espiritismo, and some santeria, right? But my siblings probably be like, no, don't talk about that. Because I don't think my family members shared things with me that my siblings didn't get access to just because of the fact that I was reading people at 16, right? And seeing things.
Yeah.
Um, they met us where they were at. And because of that, I grew up with my mom's altar with the saints on it. And, she'd be like, this is Santa Barbara, but it's really Shango, and this is this and this and that.
Mm.
When colonization came in, when the Spanish, the Italian, the English, etc., came in, they drove indigenous wisdom and African wisdom into hiding. The brilliance of the African people. I just went to Cuba last year, and that was like on my list for a long time. But the brilliance of the African people, that they survived by doing something that's called syncretism, where they syncretized the African forces of nature, the West African forces of nature behind saints. So they'd be dancing to Santa Barbara, but it was really their king of fire, Chango. And they would be praying to La Caridad del Cobre, hey, let me have a baby. They were really praying to Oshun, right? Or Chun, sometimes call her that. Or there was an issue with somebody in the law, and they would be praying to Obatala, por favor, cool heads, right? Or somebody sick, Babaluaye or San Lázaro. I have a big old San Lázaro that belonged to my brother. And so because of this awareness that we didn't really talk about with anyone, I always was interested. And I'm always careful because, again, being white passing, I don't want to be seen as somebody who's trying to take on anybody's religion. But I do want you to know that I've always known that my ancestors were from West Africa, some of them, and that they were closer than farther. And
Mm.
then the test proved that I knew that they were closer than farther because they came to me. They were
Mhm.
like, no, girl, this is yours too. Like, ven aquí, mamita. Like, a lot of the times when I'm being like called to something to be saved or to be helped, it is an African energy or it is an indigenous energy. And sometimes, which I recently found out I didn't know, sometimes it was a Celtic one. And I'm like, but now I found out that the Spanish part of my family comes from the north, and that's where the Celtics come from. But I have
Mhm.
brown hair. This is a dye, my hair is brown. But but I was like, oh wow, that's why I do have like a Celtic cape, right? That's why there's this thing. But for me, like Africa's our homeland, everybody's homeland. I don't care who you are. And and then so moving, and so to me, like I want you to know that for Puerto Ricans, they put it into espiritismo. So hay el libro de los mediums, there's the mesa blanca, where they sit in a circle. And that's the way it evolved. More than Santeria is Espiritismo. They have a bóveda with the white glasses of water where they put the pictures of their people, smoke a cigar. It's a different. And I studied Afro-Caribbean religions with Dr. Marta Moreno Vega back in 2003. Dr. Marta Moreno Vega. And she was a professor and a priest of Obatala, the god of the white cloth, which is the cool head, right? And so I just studied everything I could get my hands on. And then was read by somebody who told me, so I was 26 and I got read. Dr. Marta Moreno is incredible. She's Puerto Rican and she got initiated in Cuba. And I was like, what was I say? I got read at 26 in Miami and they started going, yay, oh, yay, oh, yay, oh, and they put on like little yellow caps. I'm like, do you know those Shun is with you? And that happens a lot. You don't know who owns your head until like initiation.
Mm.
They do like, I forget the name of it, but it's like El Ita de Vida or something like that. It's like this registry where they tell you about your life, what you can eat, who you can be, what you can do. And if they tell you can't go in a pool, you can't go in a pool. That's just what it is, right? You're owned by Ori. Everybody has Ori, everybody has power. And the head is the very sacred place. And so they were like, do you know? And I'm like, I do know her. But I thought I was Yemaya, right? At that point, which who knows, right? And I was like, well, I'm more motherly and more. And then they were like, are you the leader of the group of women that you're with? And I was like 26. I was like, yes. All right. Do you practice, candle magic and this and that and then spirituality? I was like, yes. Do you dance in front of the drums and like don't even know when time is passing? I'm like, yes. And then they're like, do you feel free with your sexuality though you've experienced sexual abuse? I'm like, yes, I do. I have not let a man own that, even though I've been harmed. Do you believe in the power of women and like spiritual empowerment? So everything that they said, I said, but I thought she was more like a little slutty, it's like I was 26, but that's colonization, right? That's colonization. And they were like, listen, and then they threw it out there. They're like, you've been self-pleasuring since you were a little girl. And I'm like, and then they threw me out there and I'm like, oh yeah, masturbation is not just for little boys. Little girls have little orgasms too. And so that's when my mind blew open. And for everybody here, people have demonized it. Colonization has demonized these practices. And a lot of us get attracted to Yoruba or Santeria or what is it? Palo de Ocha? No, it's Regla de Ocha. Sorry, I'm getting confused with Palomonte, which is a different thing. Regla de Ocha, which is all very similar, and they all come from West African traditions. We get attracted because we see Oshun. She's dancing. She's golden. She is biracial a lot of times, mixed.
Mm.
But sometimes that Orisha attracts the person in. And then when they do the real reading, they find out somebody else owns their head.
Mm.
Cool. And so what she means to me, there's a quote that I don't know if I'll say it correctly. It's about Maya Angelou, which says, a woman in harmony with her spirit flows like the river, flows in harmony, flows like a river in harmony, and arrives prepared to be herself and only herself. Something like that. That's a quote from Maya Angelou. That was on my first website in 2005 with an Oshun on there. And to me, it's like, that's the epitome of like being a woman, that we trust, that we flow, right? I'm getting emotional, that we can flow with our bodies, with our cycles, with the stages in life, that we can find ourselves useful and valuable and beautiful and sexual and empowered at any stage and not need to look like anyone else or be anyone else and be in harmony with ourselves. And so that's what she means to me, is like, how do I be in harmony with myself? And how do we heal? Because Oshun also represents, at least one of her caminos, all of these bombshells have been sexualized, all these beautiful, sexy movie stars and women. And I think that Beyonce, when she came out in her golden outfit, representing Oshun, right? To me, and she came out in her golden outfit at the Grammys, it's like she was reclaiming it. I'm nobody's sex object.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because beautiful women that are desired by people or however projected upon, we get harmed.
Yeah.
We get our intelligence gets minimized. Oh, so sexy, so you must be dumb. When I was thin and I had a big chest, people were like, ah, es una airhead porque tiene mucho gusto and this and that. It's like, no. One of my boyfriends said, I think the extra brains went in your chest. But I was like, he said, you're so smart that God put the extra brains. I was like, okay, you're crazy. But I was like, whatever. But when you see a woman that's curvy or see a woman that's flirtatious, we immediately think that her intelligence level is low. Why can't be curvy, flirtatious, sexy, sexual, and intelligent as fuck? And so I want you to know that I do have an altar to her. And when I went to Cuba, it was really amazing because it links back to what we said earlier. Poverty there is huge, as we know. And I walked into cabildos, which are the houses, the iles, the homes of this African spirituality, right? And I met people who were like already 200 years in to the religion. And some African American women here were crying because they were like, oh, we don't have that. And what they were told was the English enslavers here in America didn't let folks like deal with, they were more Protestant and Christian rather than Catholic. So they
Mm,
couldn't hide their religion. So that's where we start to get the Black church and Baptist church and other type of church. They had to put their African wisdom into that. Whereas Puerto Rico, to some degree, Cuba, Latino America, DR, all that, what wound up happening is they just hid it in the saints.
mhm.
And they said the Spaniards let them drum. And what the Spaniards didn't know is that they were drumming for peace, for healing, for war. And I want you to know that in DR, yes, it is out. I had a mentor who was 21 Divisiones. She didn't tell me till later on, but people are still afraid.
Yeah.
People are still afraid. And the truth is, you could get an evil eye from a Christian because they're like, sucia, mira como te vistes, and they pray on you and they pray on you and they pray on you and they pray on you. And suddenly you're like, I don't feel good, right? Because it's energy.
Yeah.
And so it's I think it's beautiful. And I think that I don't know, I've only just been blessed with the wisdom. And I want to add one more thing because I know we're going a long time, but when I was in Argentina and I was told that I needed to get my uterus out, this was like 14 years ago. I was heartbroken because I wanted to try to have kids. And all the doctors that I was seeing, suddenly I had really bad fibroids. And I knew, I was like, I need Oshun to step in and save me.
Mm,
And all I did every day, and nobody knew because they couldn't hear, I played the drums of a priest. I don't have the names right now, that it was the actual song, her actual song that they played. There's many, but her actual song. And I was like begging Yemaya, who's the mother of the oceans, and her, please, mothers, help me, bring me the right doctor. And nobody knew because we didn't talk about it in the car. We had a driver. And one day my mom stepped out and the driver turned around and goes, I could lose my job. Please, please. He said, don't say anything. And I said, what? He's like, I'm a priest of Shango. Do you know what that means? He goes, they're telling me that you know what this means. I said, I do know what that means. I have to help you. I have to help you. I started crying because he couldn't hear my drums. He couldn't hear my drums. And he says, my wife is a priest of Oya. And he was a white passing man, I just want you to know, who had African background. Um, and he said to me, and the people say there's no Africans in Argentina. There's Afro-Argentinos. Just that the history is effed up as many places, right? But they exist. And so my mom was scared at first, but I was like, I don't need new shoes. I need a ritual. And they performed the healing ritual for me, and I was able to keep my womb. I
wow.
came back and they said, you're going to keep your womb. I didn't wind up having kids. I didn't meet the right person at the right time, at the time. But I was able to come back, go through doctors, and I found a doctor who took out 20 tumors. I had a 6-month pregnancy belly.
Oh my God.
Los doctores, they just were like hysterectomy. And I was like, please, please let me keep my uterus to see if I could have a baby. And that was given to me, and I sat there with the priest of Shango and the priestess of Oya, and they had me and they cleansed me. They did a ceremony on me, and then we talked. And they're like, you know a lot. I'm like, I've been studying for a long time. I read every book I can get. I studied from a priest. And well, something that I did find out is that my dad did some of the initial initiations, but he didn't go through with the full.
Mm,
And I just want anybody to know too that I'm not initiated, but I have deep reverence. And when I meet people who have actually gone through it, I get emotional for them because it's a sacrifice.
yeah.
You sleep on the floor, they cut off your hair, you dress in white for a year, your life completely changes. It's not what you want, it is what the owner of your head wants for you. It is a deep commitment. And so it's not to be played lightly. Everybody's like, get cute, Shun, you're cute. You're my, okay, we can talk about them. But to walk that path is a path of great commitment.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so surprised you asked me that.
Yeah, no, like Oshun has been showing up in a lot of different ways for me and for somebody else that I love very, very much. And I've just been very curious. I used to be afraid of learning about Santeria because of the power that there is behind all of the rituals. But lately I've really been able to, I guess, discern, surrender, power, vulnerability, I guess all of it. And I don't know. I'm just curious. I feel like I'm trying to learn a little bit again. So
Oh, and you know what? Dr. Marta Moreno Vega's book, The Altar of My Soul, talks about her journey as an Afro-Puerto Rican woman who reclaimed that part of herself. And what I want to share with you too is like, instead of either or, why can it be and? You know, why can't we, especially those of us who are more mixed, because I know people who are basically Ukrainian and German, you know what I mean? I know people who are like Irish and English, or have come straight from Africa and are like, yo, I'm 99% African. I'm like, oh my God, wow. Or Asian. But for us who are Latinos who've been mixed, I think when we're open, we're guided to reclaim that part. Like when I did like the 2.5 years of training with my Peruvian teachers, because
Mhm.
I was born in Peru, but I never thought I really had ancestors from there. I thought my indigenous ancestors were Argentinian, but they weren't. They were Peruvian that went into Argentina. And so it was shock to be like, oh my God, the indigenous part of me is all from Peru and
Yeah.
Mexico de Mexico. But that was me reclaiming that part and feeling worthy. Like during an initiation, I was crying and they came and they're like, you are worthy even though you're light. Don't feel bad. You know, was it your fault that your indigenous grandmother wound up with the white Spaniard? It's like, and then they kept marrying that, on that side, whiter, and then here you are, you know what I mean? Like, we're still with you, we're in your spirit, we're here. And I think that no matter where we are in that spectrum, as Afro Latinos, indigenous Latinos, white Latinos, whatever it is, Asian Latinos, Middle Eastern Latinos, to know that it's not our fault and that it's powerful to reclaim that power.
Hmm.
And colonizers say pick. I say and. You
Oof,
know,
I like that.
right? We can be African and claim our indigenous and claim and own it and be like, and that's why I feel like I've been saved so many times for so many things, because it's like there's a hella powerful ancestors behind me, you know? And also that the work that I'm doing is also to heal what the colonizer ancestors that I have done.
Mm,
It's like a balancing,
yeah.
you know? So, but I'm excited for your journey with Oshun.
I'll have to keep you updated. I have to keep you updated. Oh my gosh. Well, Vanessa, I I always love it when I sit down and have conversation with you. You're such a wealth of wisdom, and oh my gosh, I'm getting a little emotional. You're so amazing. You have been like a pillar in this Latina community, BIPOC community. You've really paved the way, and you continue to pave the way every single time. And I'm just so excited to see what continues happening for you. And if anybody's listening, please go find her. So where can people find you?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love you so much. And I just see you as like, you're this up and coming like leader, mujer medicina. And I'm just honored to be here. Thebizbruja.com and Akashic Record readings, trainings, retreats, one coming up in Pennsylvania in March. And yeah, the ancestral hypnosis healing, the past life regression. It's all there, but reach out if you're curious and we can have a free chat.
Yes, and I'll have her information also in the show notes for you to be able to find her. So thank you everyone for listening. Until next time.